Welcome back here. In a new interview this morning, Liz Cheney says the House's January 6th committee may well make multiple criminal referrals, including to former President Trump. She told ABC's Jon Karl that, quote, the single most important thing is protecting the nation from Donald Trump. And she once again teased more to come, more findings from the probe. The committee has been split on the issue of criminal referrals, but it's clear where Cheney stands. After Cassidy Hutchinson's breathtaking testimony this week, Cheney shared this story by constitutional lawyer and conservative writer David French, saying the case for prosecuting Trump just got much stronger. French is a senior editor of The Dispatch and a contributing writer for The Atlantic, and he's here with me now. So I think Cheney apparently agrees with you. I know retweets are not endorsements, but in this case, right, seems to be where her head is at. What was it about Hutchinson that persuaded you, David?
Yeah, I'll tell you very simply. It wasn't the testimony about the allegedly lunging at the Secret Service driver. It was the testimony that Trump knew the crowd was armed. And this is, again, Hutchinson saying she heard this from Trump's own mouth, that he knew the crowd was armed. He knew they weren't there to hurt him. And he wanted the mags, the magnetometers, removed to fill out the crowd. And what that does is it demonstrates that Trump was aware that the crowd was dangerous. This means Trump was aware that when he's telling them to fight, when he's telling them you can't take your country back with weakness, that he knows he's sending an armed crowd to the Capitol. And this is something that's really important in the legal analysis of incitement, because the relevant constitutional law, the relevant case law, is pretty protective of free speech, even free speech that might advocate violence. But it won't protect speech if the speech is calculated to and likely to lead to imminent lawless action. Here, we know that there was lawless action. That happened. But was Trump, what Trump said, was it calculated? Was it intended to lead to lawless action? Well, this filled in a missing piece of the evidence, and I think the evidence grows stronger every day.
The right-wing media reaction mostly was about smearing Hutchinson, dismissing her secondhand accounts, and not focusing on the substance. Here are a few of the headlines against Hutchinson. There's also criticism of the press for highlighting anonymous sources challenging her secondhand accounts. Here's the headline from Jennifer Rubin in the Washington Post saying, hey, media, stop regurgitating anonymous attacks. What did you make, David, of the pushback from these anonymous officials apparently coming in the direction of the Secret Service saying, hey, there are people who will contradict what she said. They're willing to testify under oath, but 5 days later, they haven't yet.
You know, I don't have a problem with reporting anonymous sourcing properly. I mean, anonymous sourcing has a long history in journalism, and done properly, it can be valuable. But we have to weight the different kinds of evidence here. Here we have, on the one end, we have somebody who is sworn under oath as to what she heard the president say, most specifically regarding knowing the crowd was armed, or what she heard others say regarding Trump's behavior in the SUV. That's under oath. And then you have an anonymous source who is not under oath, allegedly seeking to refute sworn testimony. I weight sworn testimony higher than I rate anonymous sourcing.
Yes, as we all should. You turned me on to the phrase exhausted majority. Most Americans in this country are exhausted. And in your new column this morning, you say America's not just red and blue. It's red and blue and just plain tired. So tell me about the people you hear from that are not the trolls or not the partisans who are freaking out all the time, but the exhausted majority. I want to talk more about the exhausted majority.
Yeah, you know, every analysis of America that is red and blue and that's it is just missing it. It's just missing it. And what's become increasingly clear, and this is research that we've seen since 2018 from a group called More in Common, that just keeps being re-amplified and reaffirmed, is that the majority of Americans aren't firmly red and aren't firmly blue. They're the 2/3 of Americans who, on the right to the middle to the left, who feel somewhat alienated from our politics, and they are fed up with American polarization. They feel forgotten in the discourse because everything caters to hardcore red and hardcore blue. Yeah. And, you know, quite frankly, they're more flexible in their views. They're willing to hear from other people. And this is a group that's called the exhausted majority of Americans. And it's this exhausted majority that both has enormous potential power in our politics, but often feels just shoved to the side. And I think one of the keys to sort of healing some of the breaches in our country is if this exhausted majority gets a bit more energized.
Right. I like the way you framed it in your column. It's my experience as well. The tired, frustrated, sad people are the ones that email you. The angry ones are the ones that are on Twitter and on Facebook yelling all the time. But that's a minority. And most of us are just worried about our friendships and our personal relationships
Yes.
and how politics is tearing those apart. And those are the voices we need to amplify. So we need you to come on and talk about that more often, David.
I would love to. I would love to. And I hear from people all over the country who are worried about relationships and are pulling away from sharing their beliefs because of those fear of lost relationships.
Hey, I think that's one of the stories of our time. I hope we can work on it this 4th of July holiday. David, thank you for coming on. Good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me.